Hi, this is Srinivas, editor of EEHerald. I am bringing you Joy Bhattacharya, young and energetic tech leader from Taiwan, is heading Sera Networks. Hi, Joy. Welcome to our interactive talk.
Hi, Srinivas. Thank you for having me. It's a
Yeah,
pleasure to be here.
very much. Indeed, it's pleasure to interact with you for second time. In
Of
fact,
course.
so we going to discuss about very interesting trends such as AI infrastructure, wireless, wired, as well as physical AI, ORAN, and we touch upon the Taiwan, India, and the geopolitical impacts of the overall industry. Okay, Joy, let's come to this technology things.
Sure.
AI infrastructure is really going everywhere,
Right.
even in India. So you have seen, particularly in the networking area, switches coming out with the speeds exceeding 800J, moving towards 1.6T,
Mm-hmm.
and these co-packaged optics chips are coming to the market.
Right.
How you companies like Sera Networks going to play the role in this market?
Mm-hmm.
What are the kind of components you're trying to innovate inside your boards?
Mm-hmm.
And what is that latest technology in this area you would like to share?
I see. Well, it's interesting that you asked this question. To give you a little bit of perspective, we actually, back in 2019,
Mhm.
we were the alpha site. That is the first ones in the world who came out with a 400 gig product at that time. So we have been following trends very closely, of course. We work very closely with Marvell Technology. So the US listed company, we use their chips and PHYs and components for our data center switches, of course. At the moment, this year we're going into mass production with an 800 gig switch, and Marvell has a 1.6 tera switch coming out in mass production soon as well, and we'll be very interested to work with them on that as well. Co-packaged optics is something that's very interesting, and especially when you go to 1.6 tera or higher scales. And the reason is that with those kind of speeds on SerDes, right, what happens is when you do a trace from the chip itself to, let's say, the front of the switch through the panels and everything, even the trace distance, if it's like zero point 0.3 meters or something like that, even that distance adds to the latency, because at 1.60 your driving distance has to be very very short between the chip and where the connectors are. So that is where co-packaged optics come in, because you're packaging directly on the chip, so you're eliminating noise, you're eliminating loss, you're actually increasing the performance, all of that. And that's something that, of course, everyone is investing heavily in, and we are also investing heavily in. The advantage of working with Marvell is they've got light engines for these. They're coming out with CPO, CPC options for these as well, and it's really a very holistic environment.
Excellent. The short distance matters.
Very, very. If you, even like a feet,
Whether you have to go for copper or fiber, it all matters a lot,
very
right?
much, very much.
And then you have a lot of the legacy infrastructure even with the network world as well as wireless infrastructure, say 5G tower, even in the Wi-Fi infrastructure. So you are very much serving both wired and wireless, right?
Mhm.
So your equipment, if somebody need to upgrade by using your equipment,
Mhm.
what is your suggestion so that they can enhance their equipment's performance as well as maintain at
Mhm.
significantly low cost?
Mhm.
So, what is that your suggestion like overhaul of the complete system or selected equipment? What is the trend now in this kind of legacy infrastructure
Mhm.
application?
Mhm. See, the problem with legacy infrastructure is in the word legacy itself,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes,
So
correct.
they're not really designed for this kind of modular upgradation or something like that. That's where OpenRAN itself came in the first
Exactly.
place,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you kind of disaggregate all of these, so you don't have to upgrade a $25,000 box.
Right.
You can upgrade a $2,000 radio,
Oh.
or you can upgrade $5,000 this and do it that way. So that's where we come in. We also have this kind of modular approaches, especially with OpenRAN. We have something we call software-defined radio, also working closely with another chip partner in Taiwan itself. With software-defined radio, it's very interesting. So let me say that today, let's say in India 5G, they're talking about N78 primarily, the band. And let's say I sell you a radio today with N78, right? Tomorrow the government comes and says that no, N41 is the official band in which you have to do these radios. Your only choice if you go with other vendors is you replace the entire radio itself. With us, we have something called software defined radio. So actually, you don't need to replace the entire radio. You need to replace two physical components which are field replaceable. That means you don't need to come to us. We can sell you the components, or we can point you in the right direction. You can do it by yourself. There's a cavity filter that needs to be replaced, and there's a power amp.
Excellent. The modular approach is very much working for your customer as
Yep.
well as for you.
Yep. And on the software side, we can issue an over-the-air software update to the digital front end, the DPD algorithm.
That's added advantage.
Yep. And you're good to go. So you can change band to band, I would say, under $1,000.
So I about to ask you about OpenRAN. You already addressed it. So now let's go to another important market you are targeting: system on modules, basically edge AI and physical AI. So what is that the trend you're seeing in this area, physical AI and edge AI? Is it something very interesting market for you? Is it something a new market for you?
No, absolutely. So I think edge computing, fog computing, these have been around for more than a decade now. But I think last couple of years, ever since COVID, basically, is when it has really picked up momentum. So we're also seeing a lot of traction in that market. We work very closely with MediaTek for these edge computing products, system on module, so to speak. So it's also a very good market. It's a lucrative market. The more you can do on premise, on device, the lower your cost is, the better your resiliency is in long term.
What's the form factor, the size of the module? Do you think that's an important criteria with humanoid robots and all coming in? And the form factor is not still that important factor.
See, for form factor for a system on module, we're seeing SMARC and OSM. These are the two most common form factors. Sizes are pretty decent. So you could have something around this big, right? Go into it. So, and that comes with everything, right? That comes with memory, cache, storage, all of these things. So it's not really a big concern for applications like that. Where size does matter is, for example, your smart cameras, anything that is space constrained, right? But we have solutions coming out for that as well, where we are lowering the form factor by 50% again to fit into these.
You are from a country, Taiwan, which is famous for ODM and OEM and quick turnout of designs and quick satisfaction of requirements by the customer. So, in that sense, basically, if you look at the present market of all these three or four areas like AI infrastructure, legacy infrastructure, open RAN, and physical AI, so how competitive is this market? Even forget outside Taiwan, even inside Taiwan itself, and where exactly you try to, kind of separate from the crowd in terms of.
That's an interesting question, and it's something that I can't answer very easily because you have to see it to believe it. The Taiwanese ODM ecosystem, of course, is extremely strong. And no matter if you're a US company, if you're an Indian company, if you don't want to go to China, your only option is Taiwan in terms of ODM, right? So that is something that's already there. So just to be, another player, go and say me too in that market is, well, kind of, pointless to do that. So where we differentiate from traditional Taiwanese ODMs is software. So traditional Taiwanese ODM companies, they would also have software capabilities, but it's mostly firmware, kernel, firmware level software, board level BSP, these kind of things, and then they leave the actual software operating system features, all of these, to the US or other companies who are developing on top of that. So if Cisco is a huge company that does software very well and everything, and I think that's
very good thread. You
yeah.
gave to me the software thread. I'll take this thread and connect it to the Indian software capability. So Taiwan and India, Taiwan is very much hardware centric. Of course, they are software centric too. But if you look at India, it's the complementing thing. If you look at is our software capabilities. Huge number of software designers who can support you. In that sense, let's get into the India part. let's start with this complementing thing.
Mhm.
Where exactly India complements
Mhm.
to take this further, in particularly in the software and any other areas where you see huge complementing resources available by
I
a
see.
company like yours in India?
So this is a fantastic question.
Uh,
So thanks for bringing this up. I think from this perspective, what you could say is that so Sera, for example, we complement ourselves on our design capabilities as well as software capabilities and how well they integrate together. So to give you an idea, a product that we come out with today, let's say our 400 gig switch or something like that, it is already a production grade device with production grade software that can go toe to toe with the best and then some. And but the total cost of ownership for taking this instead of the incumbents from us is far lower. I would say over a 40% reduction. Now, where India comes in is exactly the software play. What is happening is most of the US giants, most of the incumbents, they're actually already doing software in India. It's an open secret. So if you look at all the big Indian tech houses, I won't name any, but
yeah,
you know what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
yeah.
They all do software for these giants that we were talking about earlier, and that's a good thing. But the problem then becomes who is the ownership? Where does the ownership of this lie? If you're talking about this kind of software stuff, whether these companies, big companies, do it in house or outsource it to Indian tech companies, IP still is in the US.
Yes, you're right.
All the IP is in the US. So yes, you have engineers doing stuff over here, but everything goes back to the US. What we are trying to do differently is we want a technology transfer model. So yes, we are headquartered in Taiwan, but I'm opening up our Indian offices this year later, and we're aiming to do a technology transfer for the manufacturing, for the design, and eventually, of course, as well as for the software. And all of this IP will be registered in India, and it will stay in India.
Excellent. Very good.
So this is something that we're going to do very uniquely moving forward.
Very good. So okay, then let's come to the another 2 to 3 questions on India. So the India is emerging now also as a manufacturing hub, even a design hub, not
Right.
only a software services hub. So in that sense, a lot of government schemes are there where they're giving incentives, even the funding, as well as some interesting schemes to skill development, things like that. So, how is your company evaluating India
Mhm.
when it compares to other regions, emerging regions like Vietnam or Malaysia, even forever Mexico?
Mhm.
So, kind of your analysis on the subsidies and how it's going to help your further expansion in India and whatever your plans into India.
So far, I'm aware of three major classes of subsidies, which are production linked,
Yes,
design linked, and
yes,
component linked.
correct,
Right.
correct.
Most of these come because components are still not being manufactured in India at the level that we want. So we have no choice but to import them for the near future. However, I hope that changes pretty soon. If we come to production linked, of course, with all the assembly and the manufacturing, we are part of that journey as well. So that's very important. And finally, if you're coming to the design linked incentives, I absolutely agree with you that other than the software services, India is emerging as a huge design house, right? So you've got all these huge companies, Qualcomm, everyone is set up in India. They're doing so much design here. Even Marvell themselves, they have a 2,500 strong office in India to do the design. So that's all great
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
moving forward.
Yeah.
And where we think probably some better policies could be implemented, it's not just getting companies to do it here, but once I do it here, what's in it for me, or what's in it for the entire ecosystem, what's even in it for the taxpayer
Oh,
who has subsidized my
right.
journey. At the end of the day, if the product I make is not widely adopted or widely used, then it becomes a futile effort. So
Yeah,
where
yeah.
probably I would want to see some changes is if there are companies who are doing a certain amount of things in India, who are bringing the technology in India, registering the IP in India, building up the ecosystem in India, so to speak. Probably we would want to see policies that push for adoption rate increased from these homegrown companies. So the government itself would either procure from these companies as a first right of refusal kind of thing, or push industry to kind of procure locally as well. that would be, I think, a major thing moving forward.
So you are really kind of supporting the natural growth of technologies here rather than
Absolutely.
buying the technologies from abroad.
Absolutely. And we have so much local demand.
Yes,
We
yes.
have so much local demand that, probably after China, we're the only country who can, claim to have this kind of demand locally.
Exactly.
So even for China, that's how they did it. And I think that's something probably we can learn from them as well, that, once you have a local company doing something like that, then use that company, grow that company, and, invest in that, and, keep pushing the envelope and redesigning. So that's what I also hope we can be, pretty soon.
Yeah, things are very positive and optimistic in other sense. You're
Yeah,
saying with the way the market opportunity and
yeah.
all, the
But yeah,
challenges remains.
yeah. So this is something that still needs a bit of work, a bit of policy making framework
Exactly.
that needs to come up.
Government has to look at holistically and support every stakeholder.
Yep.
You have seen some geopolitical impacts such as war in Gulf, which is impacting supply chain, and other such disturbances, and also certain memory prices going up, things like that. What is this? What is your view on that? Any such challenges you foresee in this year, next year? Do you like to comment or just leave it as it is? This
It's, I mean, nobody can see the future, right?
yes,
Memory prices is something that nobody can probably,
yes.
predict.
Never thought of the way it
I
goes up.
know, right? So we saw it coming, by the way. Last year we saw this happening. So we invested heavily in memory. As a result, right now, if you look at our competition or something like that, we are able to provide much more stable, pricing, stay afloat for now. But of course, if things keep going this way, everybody needs a new,
Yes,
strategy to tackle this. And for wars and this kind of supply chain disruption, uh, well, currently everybody is suffering. Right?
everybody is suffering.
Nobody is winning out of this right now. And same for us. I do hope conflicts get resolved in a more or less peaceful manner, where it doesn't escalate. Seems like the ceasefire is holding for now, but let's see. I do hope for the best.
Things will come down.
Absolutely.
The heat will come. Okay, you are a techie, I know, bit of. So, what is that? Any kind of future prediction of exciting technologies coming year or the next year? So, you have seen GPUs taking over CPUs, and now NPUs are coming in. Physical AI is trending. Any of one or two points on future exciting emerging technologies?
Well, there's a lot of things happening. You mentioned the CPO CPC
Yeah,
space. That's something very exciting that's happening. There are certain improvements being made in the optical and photonics space as well, that are going to be revolutionary a few years down the line. Most of these are being done with companies like Marvell and Taiwanese ODMs together, but I do hope eventually we bring this to India. One interesting thing that we are doing in all of our products is gallium nitride. So with gallium nitride based power supplies, right? So it's just mind blowing. When I was leading the design for this kind of thing, we were using a MOSFET power supply, and it was about this big, right, for a 700 watt power supply. We switched to gallium nitride. We double the power, almost 1,350 watts, same dimensions,
Same dimensions.
same
Same
dimensions,
dimension, double the power.
double the power, 10% increase in efficiency,
Efficiency, lower
10%
heat generation,
lower heat generation, less thermal stress, mean times between failures goes down.
faster devices.
So just incredible. And so, and the cost is not that much. It's not a significant cost difference. Per power supply, we're looking at maybe a 5 to 7% cost difference versus MOSFET at the point.
That's not much
Yeah.
actually. Earlier, gallium nitride significant disadvantage was cost.
Yep.
I think that cost that is also being now addressed.
So we co-develop the power supply. We are actually hold the IP for this, and we work with National Taipei University in order to design and develop this power supply for the last 3 years. So it went pretty well. So that's something that's very interesting and unique.
Thank you, Joy.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure
Yes.
talking to you.
Always lovely.
Anything else you would like to add? Or not?
No, I just wanted to get your perspective as well. That from Taiwanese companies who are exploring India, and who are looking at India as either a design or a production or even from a software perspective, what would be your advice or opinion to companies like this? What kind of pitfalls should they navigate?
Yeah, what I see is since I started this year or 2008, I interacted with quite a few people from Taiwan. What I see is for Indians, Taiwan is somehow culturally goes connect easily with Indian executives, and also the trust factor is quite high
Mhm.
compared to other regions.
Right.
And Taiwanese understands Indian market very well, and they invest in right time,
Mhm.
and they support very well. More
Mhm.
than anything else, they support very well.
Mhm.
Both and they were flexible,
Right.
particularly on the cost, performance, and things.
Mhm.
These are the factors which basically help Taiwanese companies to have edge over other markets.
Mhm.
Of course, there is huge competition from Japan,
Mhm.
US, and Europe. Uh, but when it comes to trust factor, I see Taiwan has a huge advantage,
Mhm.
and also the presence of companies, the wide variety of Taiwanese companies present in Indian market.
Mhm.
The only missing thing is TSMC. For some reason, they don't have a company, or it is their call. Anyway, PSMC is partnering with Tata.
Mhm.
So that way, a very natural partnership, both democratic nations,
Mhm.
close relationship. I think it should take to next level, I guess.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
it's going to be a great time for Taiwanese business in India and Indian
Mhm.
business in Taiwan.
Mhm. Absolutely. No, we are also seeing that, with all the OSATs and packaging coming up around the chip manufacturing part, that's very promising. And also what we are doing in the data center space in India, especially,
Yeah.
we are also using Marvell chips that are manufactured in TSMC, right? So
Yeah.
that's a very funny story. Like Marvell is US, and then TSMC is like 2 kilometers away from my home,
Yes.
and then in Taiwan, and then I'm here talking to you right now, talking
Yeah.
about the same chips.
Yes.
So it's pretty interesting. I think definitely we're bringing a lot of game-changing technology
Yeah.
to India, and we are trying to, elevate the data center market to the next level. India doesn't really have a homegrown data center networking solutions provider, and I think this synergy and this kind of marriage between the best of Taiwan and the best of India is the only way to challenge the hegemony that is currently in place
Exactly.
from certain countries
Yes. Yes.
whom
Yes.
shall remain unnamed.
Yeah. Yeah. Better not name.
But this is the natural next step,
Yeah.
and I think so far it's going great. We just need some, support from government policies in terms of adoption. We need industrial cooperations to go well, and trust this kind of technology. I've been working to penetrate data center markets for the last 1 year. Now we are seeing some success. Of course, it takes a lot of trust for somebody.
Yes.
No matter how good my product is, no
Yes.
matter how
Yes.
good it works, at the end of the day, they're like, "You're a new player in this game,
Yeah.
and how can we trust your technology won't fail?" But now people are trying it out. Now these data centers, they've tried it out, and they're very excited. They're extremely excited about the product.
Very good.
My main challenge has so far been with import duties and taxes.
Oh.
Everything else is absolutely fantastic, and they're seeing that there's no need to go back to these incumbent companies and pay a 50 to 60% price in more for what is the same solution or an inferior solution in some cases also.
Exactly. Right.
So yeah, hopefully
All
things
the
keep
best.
going. Thank you, Srinivas. Thank you. Appreciate it.